Hello everyone. Today we are going to enter a world where the patience of nature and the precision of engineering collide head-on with the infinite stupidity of corporate bureaucracy. I am going to tell you how the arrogance of an executive, who believed that biology was as simple as watering a potted plant, turned one of the most expensive scientific projects in the country into the largest and most destructive solar oven ever built. I am the chief botanist and director of climate control for a massive international flora conservatory. To help you visualize my workplace, imagine a dome made of glass and steel the size of a football stadium. We call it the Eden. Inside, we house over $20 million worth of exotic flora, ghost orchids, prehistoric ferns, and deep Amazonian plants that only grow under the dense shade of the jungle canopy. Keeping this ecosystem alive under a glass sky is an absolute feat of technology. The glass of the dome is not normal. It is an intelligent electrochromic glass. Through a mild electrical current, the glass panels automatically darken, filtering out 90% of the deadly ultraviolet rays and blocking the radiant heat of the midday sun. Furthermore, a micromisting system shoots a fog of purified water every 15 minutes to maintain the humidity at exactly 80%. Without the dark glass and without the mist, the shade plants would die. A year ago, the foundation that owns the dome hired Fabian as the new director of sustainability and costs. Fabian came from managing the accounting department of a shopping mall chain. To him, an exotic $100,000 plant was exactly the same as the plastic geranium he had on his apartment balcony. His only mission was to slash the water and electricity bills so he could collect his efficiency bonus at the end of the year. The month of July arrived, and with it, the most brutal heatwave of the last decade. The thermometers outside read 39 degrees Celsius, over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, in the shade. The sky was cloudless, and the sun punished the city mercilessly. Our smart dome was working at 100% capacity. The glass panes were tinted almost to pitch black to block the radiant heat, and the misting pumps released a constant fog to keep the interior cool and damp. That Tuesday morning, Fabian stormed into my glass-walled control room, which is elevated over the indoor jungle. He was holding a folder of utility bills, his face red with indignation. "Botanist," he said, pointing at the control panels. "I have been auditing this building's consumption. It is an absolute scandal. You have the tinted glass consuming thousands of kilowatt-hours and the water pumps shooting hundreds of gallons of mist into thin air. Plants do photosynthesis, they need the sun. And water goes in the dirt, not in the air. You are wasting the foundation's budget. I want you to cut the electrical current to the glass so it turns completely transparent and lets the natural light in. And I want you to turn off the misting pumps. If the plants are thirsty, water them with a hose at night. We are going to save a fortune." I slowly stood up from my chair, looking through the window of my office at the delicate shade flowers growing far below, feeling a chill of pure professional terror. "Fabian, that is a biological death sentence," I explained to him in a deep, profound, and very tense voice, trying to make him understand basic physics. "This is not a public park. These are deep jungle plants. They live in perpetual shade. If you cut the power to the glass and turn it transparent in the middle of a 40-degree heat wave, this curved glass dome will act like a giant magnifying glass. The greenhouse effect will skyrocket the interior temperature to over 60 degrees Celsius. Without the mist to cool the air, the water inside the leaves will literally boil. You will scorch $20 million of irreplaceable flora to ashes in a matter of 3 hours. It is suicide." Fabian let out a snort of pure disdain, rolling his eyes with that unbreakable arrogance that only powerful, ignorant people possess. "Oh, please. You scientists are so dramatic and spoiled," he replied, leaning his hands on my desk with a cocky attitude. "I have a garden at my house. It gets sun all day in the summer, and my rose bushes look beautiful. It's just a jungle. It can take a little heat. I've been optimizing buildings for years, and I am not going to let your paranoia stop me from being the most efficient director this foundation has ever seen. This is a direct order. Either you cut the power to the glass and turn off the water right now, or I'll call security, fire you for severe insubordination, and go down to the breaker room to disconnect the system myself." Any climate engineer knows that thermodynamics do not negotiate with budget cuts. I knew perfectly well that the sun was going to turn the pride of the city into a crematorium oven. But since my livelihood and my career were under direct threat, I resorted to the strongest armor in the modern world, the unalterable digital log. "I absolutely refuse to destroy the conservatory under my professional responsibility, Fabian," I replied with absolute coldness, stepping away from the central SCADA console. "But since you have the rank of director, you will assume the responsibility in the system." I pointed to the environmental control touchscreen. "You will log in with your ID card and your personal PIN. You will draft a manual command ordering the total deactivation of the dome's electrochromic filters and the general shutdown of the micromisting system at the absolute peak of the heatwave. You will explicitly write that you reject my technical warning about the magnifying glass effect, the thermal collapse, and the scorching of the flora. And you will sign that you assume absolute, personal, and legal financial responsibility for the destruction of the $20 million in botanical inventory." Fabian let out a laugh full of vanity. "If this pathetic protocol makes you feel safer, I will gladly sign it. You technicians have a phobia of the real world," he declared. He swiped his card, typed the order while mocking my warnings, and validated the command. There's your little digital piece of paper. Now, turn off the machines and let the light in. I complied with the visual order. I hit the main breaker switch. The electrical hum of the smart glass stopped. The water pumps fell silent. The solar apocalypse had just begun. As soon as the electrical current was cut, the immense curved glass panels covering the stadium lost their protective dark tint. In a matter of 30 seconds, they became completely transparent. The July sunlight, pure, ruthless, and unfiltered, beamed straight down into the interior of the Eden. Through the glass of my control room, Fabian looked down, smiling proudly as he watched the enclosure light up spectacularly. But the beauty lasted exactly 5 minutes. Without the misting system, and under the magnifying glass effect of the massive crystal dome, the interior temperature began to rise at a terrifying pace. The sensors on the main screen tracked the ascent: 30 degrees, 35 degrees, 40 degrees. By noon, the inside of the dome hit 55 degrees Celsius, 131 degrees Fahrenheit. The humidity, which was supposed to be at 80%, evaporated entirely, leaving a bone-dry, suffocating atmosphere. And then, the spectacle of botanical death began. The delicate ghost orchids, plants that require perpetual shade, were the first to succumb. Their thick white petals began to curl and turn brown in real time. It was like watching a piece of plastic melting near a bonfire. By 1 in the afternoon, the temperature edged close to 65 degrees. The fronds of the immense prehistoric ferns twisted, losing all their water. The sap inside the stems of the thickest tropical plants literally boiled, causing small, macabre popping sounds as the plant fibers burst from the steam pressure. The smell of the dome changed. It went from smelling like damp earth and vibrant life, to smelling like burnt tea leaves roasting in a giant frying pan. Fabian, who was still in my glass office, started sweating profusely. The smile had been completely wiped off his face. "Why are the leaves turning black?" he asked me, his voice trembling, pressing his face against the glass, watching $20 million wither away before his eyes. "They are cooking alive, Fabian," I replied without moving a single muscle. At 2 in the afternoon, the extreme heat triggered the final catastrophe. The air was so boiling and parched that the thermal fire detectors on the ceiling interpreted that there was an actual fire in the facility. The emergency alarms began to howl deafeningly, and the fire suppression system released thousands of gallons of chemical fire-retardant foam over the already dying plants, giving them the ultimate toxic finishing blow. The most expensive indoor jungle in the country had been turned into a scorched wasteland covered in thick white foam. Fabian was lying on the floor of the control room, clutching his head, hyperventilating, and sobbing in an absolute panic attack. He had just realized that his whim to save a few $100 on the electric bill had annihilated a priceless scientific collection. An hour after the alarms went off, the president of the foundation, the board of directors, and the project's biggest donors, who coincidentally had a gala scheduled for that very night, arrived at the dome in an emergency rush. Upon stepping onto the walkways and seeing the desolation, the withered forest cooked underneath a layer of foam, the president almost suffered a stroke. We gathered in the boardroom of the annex building. The air conditioning was blasting, but the atmosphere was pure hell. Fabian, with his shirt soaked in sweat and his eyes bloodshot, resorted to the most cowardly and despicable tactic of a cornered boss. "Gentlemen, the climate system broke down," screamed Fabian, pointing a trembling finger at me in front of the foundation president. "The chief botanist didn't do the maintenance. The smart glass failed because of him. I asked for efficiency, and he turned off the machines out of spite to ruin the plants." The president looked at me, with a silent and lethal fury, waiting for my report. I maintained a tomb-like calm. I turned on the giant monitor in the boardroom, accessed the armored security server, and projected the unalterable log. There was the proof of his lethal execution. Massive letters projected right in front of the highest authorities of the foundation. I order the total deactivation of the electrochromic filters of the glass dome and the general shutdown of the micromisting system to reduce energy costs. I formally reject the chief botanist's technical warning regarding the magnifying glass effect, the thermal collapse, and the irreversible scorching of the flora. I assume, personally and legally, full financial responsibility for the destruction of the botanical inventory. And right below it, the digital signature and the exact card log of Fabian, Director of Sustainability. The members of the board of directors read the order. The silence in the room was so thick and crushing that you could hear Fabian's accelerated breathing. "Fabian," the president said with a voice so heavy with icy hatred that it made the executive shrink his shoulders. "You ignored the most basic laws of nature and science out of the pure arrogance of believing that an ecosystem is like your backyard garden. You have cost us $20 million and you have murdered years of botanical research. You are fired immediately, on the spot, and in total disgrace." He turned to the foundation's lawyers. "Open a civil and criminal lawsuit today for willful negligence and destruction of private property. We are going to garnish every last cent of his bank accounts and his house to try and pay for the scorched earth he just left behind." Building security dragged Fabian out, crying and begging. His corporate life ended in that exact moment, facing an impossible debt. It took us nearly a full year to clean up the burned organic remains, decontaminate the soil from the chemical foam, and start planting new sprouts. I was promoted to general director of the conservatory. And nowadays, I assure you, if I turn the smart glass to its maximum tint, plunging the dome into deep twilight, absolutely no one in the entire building dares to complain about the electric bill. If you liked it, hit the like button and subscribe for more.